Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts.
So I want you to imagine waking up at like 1.55 in the morning.
Right.
You're in the middle of the ocean. The steady hum of the engines, the one you get so used to, it just suddenly stops.
The worst feeling.
Yeah. The lights go dead. The toilets stop working.
Mm.
In an instant, this billion-dollar floating resort turns into a 100,000-ton piece of dead weight. Today, we are opening up the black box of cruise ship disruptions.
Because it's an incredibly intricate system. We tend to see these massive ships purely as, luxury resorts.
The buffets and deck chairs.
Exactly, buffets and deck chairs. But underneath all of that, they are highly regulated, deeply interconnected pieces of global infrastructure. So when something goes wrong, you aren't just dealing with a delayed vacation.
Yeah.
You are suddenly tangled up in maritime law, international health organizations, and just massive, massive logistical puzzles. And that is exactly our mission today. We are looking at the unseen machinery of the cruise industry. We're going to explore how the industry and travelers are forced to adapt on the fly when illness or mechanical delays strike.
Yeah.
And then we're going to pivot. We'll look at how some travelers looking ahead to 2026 are choosing to bypass these massive systems entirely for a radically different kind of Alaskan adventure.
Which is fascinating because the isolated incidents we are seeing right now reveal a tremendous amount about the broader structural forces shaping modern maritime travel.
Totally.
And frankly, understanding these forces it's the only way you, as a traveler, can successfully navigate them.
So let's start with the physical machinery. Because the physical disruption shows just how quickly a single hiccup can rewrite the schedule for thousands of people in a matter of hours. Let's look at March 1st, 2026.
The Carnival Sunshine.
Right, the Carnival Sunshine. This is a 103,000 gross ton ship returning from an Eastern Caribbean sailing, heading back into Norfolk, Virginia. And at 1:55 a.m., the ship suffers a power outage. They lose propulsion, they lose sanitation.
Complete blackout.
Yeah. Now, the cruise line stated power started returning within an hour, but an hour-long delay in the middle of the night somehow translated into a 3 to 5 hour delay arriving into port. How does the math work there?
Well, to understand that, you have to look at what a ship of that size actually is. When we say 103,000 gross tons, we aren't talking about the physical weight of the ship.
Wait, really? I thought that was just how heavy it was.
No. Gross tonnage is actually a measure of enclosed interior volume.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's an old maritime thing. 1 gross ton roughly equals 100 cubic feet of space. So you are dealing with millions of cubic feet of enclosed space.
Yeah, it's massive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when the power dies, the air conditioning stops, the vacuum plumbing systems lose their negative pressure, the advanced water purification systems just halt. Bringing a system of that sheer volume back online isn't like, flipping a circuit breaker in your house. It is a phased, systemic reboot.
Okay, so the mechanical reboot takes time. I get that. But that still doesn't entirely explain why a morning arrival gets pushed to the late afternoon. I mean, an hour delay should just be an hour delay, right?
You would think so, but that comes down to the absolute bottleneck of a cruise terminal.
Yeah, the turnaround day.
Yes. A modern turnaround day operates on a razor's edge. You have thousands of people trying to disembark, thousands trying to board, massive pallets of provisions being loaded, waste being offloaded.
It's a highly choreographed dance.
Highly choreographed. You cannot have new guests entering the terminal building or even the parking areas until the disembarking guests have completely cleared out and cleared customs.
It's like arriving for a dinner reservation, but the previous party won't leave the table.
That is the perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And suddenly the kitchen has to change the entire menu because you have a gridlock of 6,000 people fighting for the same curb space.
Right. So a 3-hour delay on the water creates a compounding logistical delay on land.
Exactly.
And here is a detail that really stands out to me. Carnival stated that the ship regained power and was, quote, fully functional. Yet the U.S. Coast Guard still mandated that the ship use tugboats to actually come into the dock in Norfolk.
Yeah, they did.
If your engines are back online and the captain has steering, why is the Coast Guard forcing you to hire tugboats? That feels like, a bit of an overreach.
It might feel that way, sure, but this gets right to the heart of the broader structural forces we mentioned. We're seeing a much more rigid, heightened safety posture at U.S. ports right now.
Because of Baltimore.
Exactly. You have to look at the recent historical context. In 2024, the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed in Baltimore after a cargo vessel lost propulsion.
Right, which completely paralyzed that entire region. It was devastating.
It fundamentally changed how port authorities and the Coast Guard view propulsion-related incidents, especially in crowded, infrastructure-heavy waterways like the Mid-Atlantic.
That makes a lot of sense.
So, requiring tugboats for the Carnival Sunshine wasn't about whether the ship could theoretically move under its own power at that exact moment. It was about risk mitigation.
They just want physical control.
Right. By attaching tugboats, the Coast Guard ensures an extra layer of absolute physical control over that massive hull during docking. They're simply not taking any chances with infrastructure anymore.
So the Coast Guard dictates how the ship arrives. But they also dictate how you, as a passenger, are allowed to get on. Because for the travelers sitting in Norfolk waiting to board the next itinerary to the Bahamas, Carnival was incredibly strict.
Very strict.
They issued a 6:30 p.m. cutoff time for arrival. They basically said, look, if you are not in the terminal by 6:46, you will be denied boarding, period.
Yeah.
If you've ever been the person tapping your foot in the terminal at like 6:45 p.m., wondering why they won't just let you walk up the gangway when the ship is sitting right there, it's not because the crew's being stubborn, is it?
Not at all. That 6:30 p.m. deadline is a legal mechanism. Before a ship can legally drop its lines and depart a U.S. port, the cruise line has to submit a finalized, locked-in passenger manifest to the authorities.
Ah, so it's a security thing.
Absolutely. This ties into Homeland Security and Customs and Border Protection databases. It's for international security, accountability, and emergency management.
So it's out of the cruise line's hands.
Completely. Once that manifest is electronically sealed and transmitted, the machinery of departure has moved past the point where a name can just be penciled in.
That is such a vital piece of knowledge for travelers. You just cannot treat a cruise departure time like a flexible restaurant reservation.
You really can.
But speaking of restaurants, the internal adaptation of the ship was massive here. Because they delayed boarding, they actually gave embarking guests a $25 onboard credit to cover lunch in town.
Which was a nice gesture.
Right. But once people finally got on board, the entire culinary operation had to pivot. Instead of traditional fixed dining times, you know, the classic early and late seatings Carnival, switched to open seating in both the sunset and sunrise dining rooms.
Which is a monumental task for a culinary team. I mean, think about the logistics there.
Right.
They are prepped and scheduled to cook specific volumes of food for a set number of people at exactly 6 p.m. and then another set at 8:15 p.m.
They have the steaks thawed and the plating stations organized for a very specific rhythm.
And suddenly, they have to treat a dining room designed for thousands of people like a massive walk-in diner. They even had to keep the Lido Marketplace buffet open longer just to handle the staggered, unpredictable flow of hungry arrivals.
It's wild, and that adaptation extends all the way up to the bridge, too.
Oh, yeah.
Because they left Norfolk hours late, the ship's next itinerary, a 6-night Bahamas run to Celebration Key, Nassau, and Bimini, was instantly compromised. Captain Antonio Gargiulo and the Fleet Operations Center suddenly had a massive math problem on their hands.
Right, figuring out the speed and fuel.
Exactly. How much fuel can they burn to make up time at sea versus how much port time has to be trimmed to stay on schedule? It's fascinating. The physical ship breaks down, the Coast Guard forces a slower docking, the terminal completely alters its boarding flow, the kitchen reorganizes dinner for thousands, and the bridge calculates a new route.
It really is a domino effect. But so far, we are just talking about the physical machinery of the ship. What happens when the machinery breaking down isn't the engine, but the passengers themselves? Who takes control when a ship hits international waters with a biological threat?
That introduces a very different kind of unseen machinery. Because when you cross international borders, you are no longer just dealing with the Coast Guard.
Right.
You are dealing with sovereign health ministries, and their mandate is to protect their local populations without completely destroying their tourism economies.
Let's look at a concrete example from March 1st, 2026. Same day, different side of the world, the Westerdam.
A beautiful ship. It is. It's a Vista-class ship operated by Holland America Line. And a Vista-class ship, for those who might not know, is designed specifically for these longer panoramic ocean journeys rather than just packing in water slides and roller coasters.
Right. It skews a bit older, more exploration-focused.
Exactly. It was on a massive 28-night Asia collector voyage. It arrives in Hong Kong, and authorities confirm there are 76 cases of norovirus on board.
Yeah.
Now wait, 76 cases of a highly contagious gastrointestinal illness on a sealed ship sounds like an absolute logistical nightmare. How do they even manage that without inciting a total panic?
Well, the number 76 sounds alarming on a spreadsheet, sure, but you have to break down the actual demographics of this situation.
Okay, break it down.
The Westerdam was carrying roughly 2,000 passengers and 800 crew members, so you were looking at roughly 3% of the guests and about 1% of the crew being affected.
Still, I mean, 3% sharing the same public restrooms and buffets is a risk, isn't it?
It is, but these cases weren't all happening simultaneously. Like you said, the ship was on a 28-night voyage. The patients ranged in age from 24 to 92, and the illnesses were recorded over a long period.
So it wasn't all at once.
Right. In fact, the first 2 cases popped up on the very day the ship departed. By the time they reached the dock in Hong Kong weeks later, only 3 people were still experiencing minor symptoms.
Just 3 people.
Just 3. And not a single person required hospitalization.
Even so, the response from Hong Kong was incredibly aggressive. Hong Kong's Center for Health Protection, the CHP, boarded that ship at 4 a.m.
They didn't mess around.
No, they didn't wait for regular business hours. Dr. Edwin Sui briefed the operator on infection control. They sent inspectors to physically check food hygiene practices, swab surfaces, and review medical logs.
Yeah, a full sweep.
They literally set up a temporary medical station right inside the cruise terminal to do health assessments on the spot, and they mandated enhanced cleaning protocols while the healthy guests were out exploring the city.
It's like an air traffic control system for public health.
It really is. But why deploy so many resources at 4 a.m. for a virus that had mostly burned itself out?
Because of the broader economic and geopolitical stakes.
How so?
Keeping these ships moving isn't just about avoiding bad reviews. It is critical for global tourism recovery. If you look at where the Westerdam was just days prior to this Hong Kong stop, the context becomes clear.
Okay.
On February 25th, it docked in Shanghai. And this wasn't just a routine port call. It was Shanghai's very first international cruise call for the Lunar New Year period, since travel restrictions had been fully lifted.
Oh, wow. The city actually celebrated the ship's arrival with a massive drone light show and traditional lion dances, didn't they?
They did. And you don't put on a drone show unless the arrival means something huge to your local economy.
Definitely not.
But it was also a crucial test case for a major geopolitical policy shift. Just days before, China introduced a new 15-day visa-free transit policy for nationals from several countries, including the UK and Canada.
And the Westerdam had a significant number of British and Canadian passengers on board.
Precisely. The goal of a 15-day visa-free policy is to remove all the bureaucratic friction of travel. You want tourists to step off the ship and instantly start spending money in your economy.
Right.
But if a health outbreak forces a ship into quarantine or causes ports to start closing their doors, all that friction comes right back. It would be a catastrophic failure of a highly publicized push to reopen borders.
So when Hong Kong authorities board at 4 a.m., they are protecting the ship, yes, but they're also protecting the integrity of this massive regional economic strategy.
Exactly. And their coordination didn't stop at their own borders. Hong Kong immediately notified health authorities in the Philippines, which was the Westerdam's next destination.
Oh, so they gave them a heads up.
Right. They were heading to Palawan Island, Boracay, and Manila. So the Philippines knew exactly what the case count was and what mitigation steps had already been taken before the ship even entered their waters.
It really highlights how interconnected the whole system is. It's not just one port in a bubble.
Not at all.
But, amidst all these high-level government protocols, the U.S. CDC guidance points out a vulnerability that rests entirely with the traveler. And it's about hand sanitizer.
Oh, this is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of cruising health.
Right, because people think, oh, I'll just use the hand sanitizer stations everywhere and I'm fine. But think of Norovirus, a microscopic tank.
I like that analogy.
It is heavily armored. When you pump a handful of alcohol-based hand sanitizer onto your hands, that alcohol just washes right over the virus's armor. It doesn't penetrate it, it doesn't kill it.
Nope.
But soap and water acts like a physical bulldozer. The friction of scrubbing with soap manually rips the virus off your skin so it can be washed down the drain. Hand washing is the only effective preventative measure for travelers.
It is the simplest piece of the entire unseen machinery. But it is the one thing the Coast Guard or the Center for Health Protection cannot do for you.
Exactly. Wash your hands, folks. So we've spent time looking at the incredible logistical hurdles of these massive 2,000-plus passenger ships. We've seen how they deal with Coast Guard manifest locks, terminal bottlenecks, and intricate international health cordons.
It's a lot to manage.
It is. But what if you are a traveler who wants to bypass that massive machinery entirely?
Huh.
If you've been listening and thinking, I don't want to deal with 3,000 people funneling through a single terminal, what is the alternative?
Well, we are seeing a significant paradigm shift in the industry right now, particularly looking ahead to the 2026 season.
Right.
Travelers are increasingly moving away from the vulnerabilities of the big ship model and looking at small ship, lower impact expeditions.
And this brings us to HX Expeditions and their newly announced 2026 Alaska program. Alaska has traditionally been dominated by these massive 4,000 passenger floating resorts.
Yeah, the coastline only model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But HX is introducing ships that act more like mobile base camps.
It is a structural shift in how we define a cruise. Sam Imes, the Alaska product planner for HX, specifically noted that they are building experiences, and this is a quote, with communities rather than around them.
That is a very pointed critique of the megaship model.
It really is. In the megaship model, a pristine town often just becomes a temporary backdrop for thousands of people to buy souvenirs rather than an active participant in the ecosystem.
Let's break down the mechanics of how they are actually doing this.
Yeah.
They are using a ship called the Roald Amundsen. It carries just 490 passengers. But the most vital structural difference is that it utilizes hybrid electric propulsion.
And this isn't just a marketing gimmick, you know. It fundamentally alters the experience of the environment.
Right, because how does a hybrid electric system actually function on a vessel that size? It isn't just a giant Prius.
No, definitely not. It operates on a principle called peak shaving.
Peak shaving, okay.
Massive battery banks handle the fluctuating power loads of the ship, which allows the main engines to run at their absolute, optimal, most efficient levels.
Got it.
But crucially, for limited periods, those engines can be shut down entirely, allowing the ship to operate purely on battery power.
Which means you can glide into sensitive marine ecosystems in almost total silence. You remove the constant thrum and vibration of massive diesel engines.
It's incredible.
That acoustic footprint changes marine wildlife behavior. It allows passengers to get closer to nature without disrupting the very thing they came to see.
It is a perfect intersection of environmental resilience and guest experience.
And that philosophy extends to the actual routes they are taking in 2026. They are offering itineraries like the Fjords of the Great Land, which starts around 4,632 two-legs, and the 12-night where the mountains meet the sea.
Yeah, very different routes.
But instead of pulling up to massive concrete piers in crowded tourist hubs, they are utilizing small boat outings and guided landings in highly curated locations. Two places really stand out to me here, Clawwalk and Valdez.
Clawwalk is a brilliant example of that with a community approach. This is an indigenous-owned port on Prince of Wales Island.
And the focus is deeply rooted in Tlingit culture. They have a collection of 21 historic totem poles that aren't just photo ops.
Right.
They're central to their cultural storytelling. You can go on a forest hike that actually ends with a local beer tasting.
I love that.
Yeah. The mechanics of the visit are intimate. You are directly supporting the local economy without overwhelming its infrastructure.
Then you have a destination like Valdez, which offers a powerful narrative of environmental recovery. Valdez sits in the Chugach Mountains, and for decades, its name has been globally tied to the 1989 Exxon Valdez oil spill.
One of the most infamous environmental disasters in maritime history. Millions of gallons of crude oil devastating the coastline.
Exactly. For a long time, the narrative of Valdez was solely about that trauma. But today, the integration of ecotourism is acting as an economic driver to showcase its recovery.
Wow.
HX is bringing passengers there, not just to look at the scenery, but to learn about the resilience of the ecosystem.
You can visit museums focused on the spill's aftermath, but you also physically engage with the recovered landscape. They are organizing high alpine hikes and inflatable kayaking right among the floating ice.
It proves that responsible tourism can be a primary engine for an area's economic rebirth. It shifts the passenger from being a passive spectator to an active student of the environment.
It is a total reimagining of what maritime travel can be. And honestly, it provides a perfect through line for everything we've unpacked today.
How do you mean?
Well, think about the three completely different scenarios we just explored. If you look closely, the true defining trait of the modern cruise industry isn't luxury or massive buffets or water slides. It is resilience. It is an industry built on constant adaptation.
That is a very accurate way to synthesize it.
Right. You have a captain and a culinary team who can regain power and completely reorganize a dining schedule for thousands of people in a single afternoon in Virginia.
Yeah.
You have international port authorities in Hong Kong seamlessly deploying health cordons at 4 a.m. to manage a virus and protect global borders.
It's incredible coordination.
And you have a community in Alaska transforming the site of a historic environmental disaster into a premier hub for hybrid electric ecotourism. The sea is inherently unpredictable, and the massive machinery built to navigate it has to be infinitely adaptable.
And understanding how that machinery works makes you an infinitely better, more prepared traveler.
Exactly. Next time you step onto a ship, take a moment to look past the amenities. Think about the Coast Guard manifests locking into place, the terminal bottlenecks, the acoustic footprint of the engines, and the microscopic bulldozers of soap and water. Appreciate the massive, unseen structural forces working around the clock to keep your vacation afloat. It might just be the most impressive part of the entire journey. Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts. Until next time, I'll leave you with this to consider. If the future of cruising is hybrid electric ships quietly integrating with indigenous communities, what other massive, traditionally untouchable global industries are quietly learning to tread a little lighter?